All right, so as I said before, we're going to be talking a little bit about trailside invasive species management, some tricks of the trade, things to be on the lookout for, and essentially how to make your jobs easier so you're not constantly fighting these things, and try to tease that apart a little bit. You know, as you know, the vast majority of what you're trimming back on trails to keep the to keep this open are invasive species. So the trail corridor is always kind of being like kind of taken over by invasive plants. The typical ones that you're going to be seeing are barberry, multiflora rose. We'll be talking about how to deal with some of those tonight, but the vast majority of what you're dealing with are invasive plants that you're constantly having to cut back on, and probably giving everybody on this call headaches. So let's see if we can tease that apart a little bit. The first step when you get a trail assignment or when you go out is first just know what you're dealing with, because as I said before, invasive species, depending on what plant that you have on your trail section, it's going to be completely different as to how you go about tackling that, what time of year you go after it, what its growth pattern is like. So if you do want to make the job a little bit easier, it's first step is just identification, like what's on your trail section, so that I know how to best go about this. So we divide those categories up into four primary classifications. So trees, that's an obvious one, single strong woody stem. Shrubs are primarily what the trail maintainer is likely dealing with, kind of coming into the main parts of the trail. Shrubs are defined by multiple woody stems, usually shorter than trees, although they can be quite tall. A lot of times you're dealing with vines as well. Vines can be classified into either weak woody or non-woody stems. So in other words, like when you feel the vine, does it have like a wood feel to it? But essentially vines are defined by climbing up other plants. It just can't support its own weight. It needs something else to climb up on. And then, there are some trail sections that are really taken over by herbaceous plants. These are ones that are not woody, but things like Japanese stiltgrass, for example, maybe taking over the understory or ground cover around the trail section you're at. And depending on what you're dealing with, it's going to be a different management plan. Now, typically, there can be some resistance to volunteers even learning, like as to what they're dealing with. They just know if it's going on the trail section and it's kind of impinging on our ability to walk through that trail, we got to get rid of it. But it's critically important to know what species or what plant you are dealing with. Otherwise, you may be making your work harder for you. The issue is that plant ID can be very difficult. You're looking at a green plant, you're trying to get rid of it, and quick and easy method is just to pull it out and move forward, right? And if you don't have a guidebook, plants can look like all very similar. So what strategies can we employ to make things a little bit easier on you so you feel confident looking and knowing what you're dealing with on that trail section? I would say that we offer a lot of workshops. This is a crash course tonight in invasive species ID and how to deal with it with the best management plan. But the apps that are out there right now are really incredible. I highly, highly recommend that you take and download the Seek by iNaturalist app. It works. Basically, if you can operate the picture function on your cell phone, you do not need satellite connection for this app to work. And essentially, you're holding up your phone to whatever plant you're looking at, focusing in on the leaves, berries typically, and in real time is going to give you an ID for what that species is. So the first step is really to learning about what you are doing, what you are looking at. And it's just like a scanner, like a grocery store or something. Like you hear a little beep, and essentially it tell you what species you're dealing with. I'm going to give a really, really quick introduction to this, just so you can see it in work. Many of you have used this before, but it's a really useful tool for IDing. So as you can see on your screen here, this gentleman is holding up his phone over to something that happens to be a blue blossom. And you can see that he kind of have to change your angle a little bit till you get to species. And if he had no idea what that flower was, within seconds can tell you that it's a blue blossom. So it's just using image scanning to basically scan this photo database of iNaturalist to tell you what it is that you're looking at. And especially if something is flowering or you can hone in on the leaves, it's a great identification tool. There's another plant, dwarf checker mellow. The beauty of using Seek is you don't even need to take a picture of it, but if you want to learn more about what it is that you're looking at, you can take a picture. You can scroll down, and I don't know if you saw it for a split second there. The Zoom thing is sort of in my way, but it did say it will tell you if it's native or invasive as well, and what it is that you're dealing with. It'll tell you a little bit about what that species is. It'll tell you what its range map is, its taxonomy. You do not need all of this information, but if you're interested, you could learn like literally within seconds of what it is that you're looking at, and look at different pictures and learn information. It will also tell its seasonality, which Ryan's going to talk about later, which becomes really important about when you are pulling these things out, trimming them back. It tells you right here that its seasonality, or it's a lot of when the pictures are taken, or its main features are happening in a certain month. So that becomes important for our conversation later with what to do about it. So that is a crash course in a fantastic app that can really help you. It's less so in the wintertime now where the leaves aren't out, but it's a great tool for just so you know what you're dealing with on your trail section, so you know what species you're tackling. Alrighty, I'm going to turn things over to Ryan for step 2, which is planning it out. You first have to learn what it is that you're dealing with, and now it's like, okay, now that I know what I'm dealing with, what's the next step? How do I go about maintaining this trail section? Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Question, please.
Yeah.
Could you compare Seek with Picture This, which does similar things?
Yep, I used to, prior to becoming the associate director of stewardship, I was the citizen science coordinator, so I compared a lot of these apps. It's just it's more people use this. It's really tailored towards more of like an ecology side of things, and I found that the identifications are much more accurate and less cumbersome, and I've just found the accuracy, ease of use to be so much better. But a lot of the common ones that you're dealing with as a trail maintainer, I would say that probably both apps would suffice. But I highly recommend Seek. Also, the other reason why I try to advertise it is that Seek connects to iNaturalist, which you can also post your observation to. So if there's something that you're not sure about, or you wanted some like other types of feedback on, you can post to like a larger database, and then we as managers can actually utilize that data to make decisions and go visit that. Say you have a picture of something you've never seen before, you can actually pin it through iNaturalist, like Seek and iNaturalist work together, and then we can go check out what that species is, or see, if you have a question, it's a little bit easier to track. All right, Ryan.
Hi, everybody. I am Ryan McLean, the Terrestrial Invasive Species Project Manager here at the Trail Conference. Following up on what Brent was talking about, it's really important to know what phenology is and what the phenology is of the species that you're seeing along your trails. So phenology is the timing of seasonal events such as bud burst, flowering, fruiting, and dormancy. And the reason that this is important is because if you manage a species after fruit appears, you could end up spreading that species even further than if you just left it unmanaged. So it is important to manage species before fruit set, especially before that fruit ripens. It is possible for fruit to ripen on cut vegetation. So if it's possible, definitely get out there before the flowers turn into immature fruits. Phenology calendars are amazing and can offer general trends, but phenology can vary from location to location and from year to year, depending on environmental factors like rainfall, sunlight availability, and altitude. There are 2 fantastic resources that I have for looking at phenology. The first is from the New Jersey Strike Team, which I'll open up. Oops. So the chart can look a little bit overwhelming at first, but what's important is to know that these colors up here correspond to different months all over here. So yellow will be a period of flowering, orange will be a period of overlap between flowering and fruiting, and red will be that period of ripe fruit availability. So if you're looking for Japanese barberry, for example, you can do a search, type in barberry or Japanese barberry, and looking across this column, you can see that Japanese barberry flowers in April and May, and it fruits over the winter, looking at September, October, November, and December. So if you have barberry on your trail section and you're looking to manage it, it would be our recommendation that you do so in August or earlier. iNaturalist also has a great chart on each of these species pages. So I pulled up Japanese barberry here as well. And if you look at this chart here, you can see seasonality, history, sex. If any of this data is inputted into iNaturalist, you can view all that. But what we're focusing on right now is plant phenology. So blue is fruiting, red is flowering, and the orange is flower budding. So you can see that a lot of people were reporting that it was flowering and flower budding in April and May. And most people were reporting that this species was fruiting in October, with some in September, some in November and December. And this species does have fruit that overwinters, so you will see a few observations throughout January and February and March as well. Okay. So after you determine phenology, another step is looking at best management practices that are available. There are definitely some general management practices that I'll get into that would work for most species that you see trailside, but plants are very unique from species to species, and management can be specific. So researching that best management practices beforehand will give you some tips that will help you along the way. Many best management practices can be found on the Lower Hudson PRISM website, so that's lhprism.org, or if you just want to have that one resource, the New Jersey Strike Team PDF that I just showed you that has phenology also has best management practices on there. Or you could do a internet search for the species that you're looking for and best management practices. Something that is really important related to best management practices is that there are some species that you really do not want to cut. And the reason for this is that they are aggressive resprouters. Cutting an aggressive resprouter will make the problem much worse, and you'll get lots of new sprouts coming up from the root system. Some common resprouters that you may encounter include tree of heaven, Japanese angelica tree, autumn olive, buckthorns, apples, mulberries, cherries, pears, willows, elms, and viburnums. There are a few more, and those are also listed on the New Jersey Strike Team PDF. So you can search for strong resprouter on there, and you can see if your species is a do not cut species. The recommendation that we have for managing these do not cut species is to just trim back branches that are leaning over a trail. This shouldn't cause too much suckering because you're not doing too much damage to that plant. Full removal of these species requires herbicide, which is cost and capacity prohibitive. For most species, there are a lot of general management tips out there. Invasive species do grow very rapidly and they spread rapidly as well. So maintaining invasive trailside properly will save you a lot of time in the long run. For small and medium-sized plants, it's best to just dig them out or pull them out, getting as much of the root as possible. The best way to do that is to firmly grasp the plant at the base and pull with gently increasing pressure parallel to the direction of growth. If you pull with all of your might all at once, that plant is going to snap at the base, you're going to leave all those roots behind, and a new plant will pop right up in its place. It's easiest to pull or dig plants out in non-rocky soil when the soil is moist. For larger plants, you'll want to cut that close to the ground instead of just trimming branches that are coming into the trail. If it's invasive, just cut it as close to the ground as you can. So I find that hand saws are better than loppers. They just offer a lot more versatility in the diameter of stem that you can get through. Regrowth is likely, so you'll want to leave a little bit of stump that you can cut the next time that you maintain, and continued cutting will eventually starve the roots. For vines, you'll want to dig or pull. If it's not possible, vines do often have very robust underground network of roots. You'll want to cut as low on that vine as possible and as high up whatever it's climbing as you can as well. It's always great to have gloves, eye protection, loppers, handsaw, and some digging tool. My favorite is the Pickmatic or a shovel when you are managing plants. We do have plans this year to film some field videos and management guides that go over basic manual management strategies. So be on the lookout for that in the near future. In terms of disposal of this vegetation, you want to keep that vegetation within the infested area. So don't carry it with you and drop it at the end. Keep it in as few and as compacted piles as possible, and you'll want to try and keep it off the ground. Piling on a large rock would be the best case scenario here to prevent the cut vegetation from rerooting. If you're in a very infested trail section and you're only able to work in that corridor and you're surrounded by invasives, you can make a pile on those other invasives that are just outside the trail, as long as you're keeping it within that trail, within that infested area. If there are seeds present, you'll want to make sure that you're cleaning all of your clothing, your tools, and removing mud from your shoes before you leave. And if you're in a really uninvaded area and it's relevant and it's practical, if it's in seed, you may want to clip those seeds off and bag them and dispose of them in the trash. That's what I have for the presentation. I do have one more update that is very exciting, that we will be instituting a lot more support for Trail Conference priorities with our Invasives program this year. We have expanded our Invasive Strike Force Crew Americorps program from 4 to 5, and this year we have 8 members. And previously, all of our members were funded by the Lower Hudson Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management grant, which meant that we could only work in New York and we could only work on LH PRISM priorities. However, this year we are having 2 of our members funded by the Americorps grant, which means that they can work in either New York or New Jersey, and they can work on whatever priorities we set for them. So throughout the season, from July through the end of September, there will be opportunities for our volunteers to submit for special projects. This is something that Tori really put forward a couple of years ago, and I hope is going to gain a lot of traction and excitement as we help you guys manage invasives that you really care about.
Okay, Bryce and Ryan, thank you. Let's just take if there's a few questions for them now. Let's take the Rose. I see your hand is up.
Ryan, I wasn't sure if it was you, or I don't think it was Brent. Is there a chart in that those two websites that you gave? When is the best time to cut things back, like barberry and multiflora rose? I know you were saying, you know, watch out for the flowers and you don't want it to fruit. So like in barberry, when would be the best time to be cutting that back and lifting it out, or when's the best time to tackle that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna send that link in the chat so that everybody can have it. The best time to manage any of these species would be before that chart has red coloring on it. So that is when it goes to fruit. So for barberry, for example, it is late September, October, and November. So managing in August would be your best bet, August or earlier.
We also understand that it's not possible to go out, you know, you can't always set it up perfectly, right? So, but the bottom line is that if you're dealing with berries, you're dealing with the seeds, then do the best you can to get them out of there. Like either pull them out or just leave them at least in one spot, so you're not just spreading it everywhere, because that's how these things take over the trail corridor.
Okay.
Yep.
I would like to point out that barberries, the berries have a 90% germination rate, and they can germinate after passing through a bird's gut. They'll also, barberry, also the roots will sprout up, and you know, and they'll put down the canes will go underground, you know, droop down. So they're really tough to manage.
They are, yes, and they spread very easily. Keeping them off that trail corridor will definitely be a continued battle. However, it really will make the battle easier if you either pull or dig it out or cut it at the base when you're managing.
And just a quick thing there, I understand Japanese knotweed is probably the worst of them all, but has there been any success on any bioagents or nothing at the moment? No. Anything for Japanese knotweed?
Nothing that's been officially approved that we're able to get in our region. The Lower Hudson Prism, as some of you are aware, it's a partnership that the Trail Conference kind of oversees and helps to coordinate. A lot of regional organizations that work on invasive species stuff. We just started a biocontrol working group. And so we're gonna, you know, on top of what is available at this point in our region, knotweed is not on the list, but we are moving in the direction of now being able to help out our hemlocks, which is fantastic. I'm trying to think. Mile a minute weed is one that's available as well. Swallowwort is now a little bit more available. I don't know if these are things that you guys are typically dealing with, but those are the biocontrol agents that seem to be effective and are available, like, to be purchased and deployed.
This is Martha Rabson. Hi, Ryan. Has there been any talk about garlic mustard? I know for a while, and I don't remember where I heard it, there was some talk about not pulling it, that it just, you know, it just spread, or it put chemicals into the ground. We hadn't heard that previously, and we've pulled it out. What's the latest?
Yep, I do not subscribe to that way of thinking. I think that that study was looking at potentially garlic mustard may eventually just kind of calm down, but I don't think that's a risk that we should take. It's super easy to pull garlic mustard, and you really have to worry only about that second year plant that is putting out seeds that year. So focusing on pulling that second year tall seed producing plant and pulling that, I think it's so easy that it's not worth it to wait around and see whether or not it will solve itself. I know that there's a lot of it, but many hands make light work, and getting a group together can really tackle that fairly easily. It's a great activity for kids as well.
All right, good, thanks.
And actually, Ryan, your comment there, something I wanted to emphasize here, of course, it's great, the individual maintainer can go out and they have a small issue with a few invasives that they may be able to tackle themselves, but you got a barberry forest to go through, one person is not going to do that. I mean, it gets way too much too quickly. So these are great places where, get a group of people together, maybe supervisors want to get a group together, and the roving trail crew where you can, work together with Katie, and, she can post it and get volunteers to come along and help. They don't need skill, we just need one person there who can tell them what to be doing. And yeah, a group of 10 people can get an awful lot done in a relatively short time. So if you have a serious problem, don't think you have to deal with it yourself. Get help.
Absolutely, and keep us in mind for that special project application that will be coming out soon. That is exactly the kind of work that I am envisioning part of my crew will be periodically working on throughout the season.